What is up, APUSH people? This is Mr. Winchell. I wanted to record a quick video and give you the updates that I promised you on the APUSH test, on the whole structure, on what to expect, as well as an updated rubric that we can use going forward in anticipation of our May exam. So I have some updates for you. I think as we begin this process together, I want to first highlight that I think these updates are positive. I think there's a lot we can do with this. I think this sets a lot of us up to be very successful on the exam coming up. So I want you to embrace this new challenge with optimism and excitement for what lays ahead of us. So first update is on time. The test is no longer going to be Friday, May 8th. College Board, in the need to adjust everything, had to push back all the AP tests 1 week. So our AP US History test will be offered on Friday, May 15th at 11 o'clock a.m. Now, I need to stress and emphasize to you that in this time of distance learning, it can feel often like time doesn't matter. In this case, time matters, right? The test is going to open at 11 o'clock. You will be able to access it at 11 o'clock, and that is the only time it will be open for you to take. There is a makeup date available that needs to be pre-approved by the College Board, so we're not going to play around with it, but the make date is for Wednesday, June 3rd at 9 a.m. Pacific time, if there are some extenuating circumstances that arise. But don't count on that. May 15th, 11 o'clock. Now, the test itself will take 45 minutes and 45 minutes only. You'll have access to the test at 11 o'clock a.m. By 11:45, you need to be done. The College Board asks that you access the testing portal 30 minutes ahead of the start time, so at 10:30 in the morning that day. The test will open at the set time worldwide. The test will close 45 minutes later, and that is it. There's not going to be this staggered test time like there normally is for College Board testing when the East Coast starts at 8 a.m., the Midwest starts at 8 a.m. when it gets to 8 a.m. their time, and so forth. Across the whole country, across the whole world, everybody's starting at the exact same time. They'll give you a 5-minute buffer zone of upload time afterwards to upload your response. And what that looks like depends on you, and we'll explore some of those options as we get down the road. But that could look like you just submitting your Google Doc that you wrote in response to the prompt. It might look like you wanted to handwrite it, so you taking pictures and uploading those to submit as well. But we'll work together to figure out what works best for each of you, so that this uploading process does not become a burden, does not get in the way of your test success. Now, the format, we've already I gave you guys this update last week, but I have a little more clarity around what it looks like and what to expect. The test is going to include only a modified DBQ. So the DBQ will be the only component of the test. In normal years, the document-based question counts for 25% of your score. This year, it's going to be 100% of your score. And that's for a couple of reasons. Reason one, the College Board wanted to ensure that the test actually assessed your ability to think historically as opposed to just know history. Second, the College Board wanted to ensure that it was the type of test that you were not able to simply Google and respond to. And a DBQ in 45 minutes does just that. It assesses your ability to dive quickly into history, to write argumentatively, and to engage in history in a way that is deeper than simply looking at a website and regurgitating information. So because of the components of online and virtual testing without a proctor there, the DBQ is in fact the best option to assess your knowledge and then hopefully give you free college credit for your work. Normally, the DBQs we've practiced with all year have had 7 documents. This DBQ will be modified down to include 5 documents, one of which will be non-textual. So either a political cartoon or a map or a graph or a chart or a piece of propaganda, something that's not textual. So 4 texts, 1 non-text, 5 documents only. Now, what will this include? College Board has maintained that this DBQ will include content only from periods 3 through 7. So the beginning of period 3, obviously with the French and Indian War and with the end of salutary neglect, all the way through, the DBQ could include the Road to Revolution or the Revolutionary War itself, or the government under the Articles of Confederation, or the Constitution, or the early Republic under Federalist rule. It could include anything through the Jeffersonian era, through the era of good feelings, through the era of Jackson, through the antebellum reform era that comes with the Second Great Awakening. It could include sectionalism increasing in the 1850s to the Civil War, Reconstruction, Gilded Age, progressivism, imperialism, World War I, economic and foreign policy of the 1920s. It could include the causes of the Great Depression. It could include the effects of the Great Depression. It could include the road to World War II. It could include the home front on World War II for African Americans, for women, for industry. It could include World War II conferences, but that is where it stops. Potsdam and the end of World War II is the last possible thing that could be assessed via the DBQ, via the test this year. That does not mean, however, that periods 1, 2, 8, and 9 are not important. The content within 1, 2, 8, and 9 could be used for contextualization. It could be used for extending your argument to other time periods via the unicorn point, as we call it, or the complex argumentation points. So just because those topics will not be assessed directly on the DBQ does not mean that the understanding of those topics and those eras is not important for putting together our best possible piece of writing in the DBQ on May 15th. So that's the content piece. That's what you can expect. That's also why we're doing review on periods 1, 2, and 8, even though you won't have a DBQ topic on 1, 2, and 8, because those time periods still matter to your broader understanding and your broader argumentation of U.S. history. Now, this is the big piece, is the rubric. As the big piece is the rubric. The rubric has been changed, but the rubric changes are only done to ensure that you have more opportunities to get points. They don't actually make any of the points harder to attain. So more to come. I'll walk you through this in just a second. I'll show you the actual rubric. I went and took all the information, typed it onto a document that makes it look like it's a College Board rubric using the College Board's language from the former rubric. So I promise we'll get there when we get there, and it's going to feel like a lot of information right now. We'll have a whole other session in the coming week or weeks in which we just spend just time on the rubric, looking at what that looks like with some actual samples that we can play around with. But just for a quick broad overview, the things that have not changed at all are the top 2 lines of the rubric, which are always included in your introduction of the DBQ. The thesis point hasn't changed. You have to establish a line of reasoning. You have to respond to the prompt. You cannot merely restate the prompt or rephrase the prompt, but you need to make a claim or a thesis that establishes a line of reasoning that is historically defensible. Context also hasn't changed. You have to connect the topic of the prompt to the broader developments of history, either before, during, or after the time of the prompt. Those 2 things, we'll continue getting our at-bats in. We'll continue getting our practices in, which is why I included this in your spring break homework, because writing the context and thesis for any prompt is going to be a relevant practice for what's going forward. The old rubric allowed for 3 evidence points. You had 1 point for content from 3 docs, 1 point for content supporting your argument from 6 docs, and the 3rd point was for analyzing using the HIP skills, historical context, audience, purpose, point of view. For 3 docs, that has changed, and now there are 5 evidence points. So it actually breaks it down a little further, which gives you more opportunities to get some of those halfway points in a sense, right? If you think back to the last DBQ that you wrote, and I gave you some feedback where I was like, man, if you'd used 1 more document, you could have gotten this point. Well, now some of those partway points are built in, which I think is and can end up being a benefit to us. So from 3 points to 5 points there. Historical analysis and reasoning used to have 2 points. 1 for did you analyze the document's audience, purpose, point of view, or context? That I should have put that here instead of use of evidence. I apologize. The one I'm missing on use of evidence is outside information. But again, that's the old rubric, so it's okay. So the analysis pieces, point 1 was on analyzing 3 documents to support your argument. The second was that complex argumentation point. These used to be called the synthesis point. That asks you for continuities and changes, causes and effects, similarities and differences, or extends your argument to other time periods. Now, the new rubric gives you 3 opportunities. If you analyze 1 document for context, audience, purpose, or point of view in support of your argument, then you get a point. If you analyze a 2nd document, you get a 2nd point. So that's changed. They've lowered the bar a bit on that to account for the time difference and the fact that you're writing these things at home. They've lowered the bar a little bit there. to allow you, if you can analyze one or two documents, to really stack up some points on that point of the rubric. But the complex argumentation point stays the same. So that the idea of synthesis or comparing and contrasting, the complex argumentation point, the unicorn point stays the same. So the 3 points that really stay the same on the rubric are the top line points and the bottom line points. Context thesis and complex argumentation. The things that are a little bit different, are the how you stack up evidence points along your way. So that's the update. That's the information. That's what we have going on. I have a quick look for you, if you'd like, of the rubric itself. This is what it looks like. Let me zoom in a bit for you. It'll look very familiar because it should look very familiar because it looks just like the old rubric did. I don't like this. That's better. So you see your thesis point, same. Contextualization point, same. The ways in which you get your points stays exactly the same. Nothing about the writing changes. All that changes is the bars to clear. So for example, this evidence from the documents point, this used to be the content of 3 documents to address the topic of the prompt, the easiest evidence point. Now it went from 3 to 2. Now again, this stays the same. All right, to earn the point, you still must accurately describe the content from at least 2 of the documents in relation to your arguments, not just quote them and say, this document says, cool, okay, that doesn't do anything. All right, what is the content of this document? This is where we took a 1-point piece here and turned it into 2 different points. If you use 2 documents to support your argument, not just the content of them, but use what's in them to support what you're trying to say, what your thesis is, with only 2 documents, you get a point there. All right, that used to be 6 documents. So we went from 6 out of 7 to 2 out of 5. I like those math odds. I like what we're playing with here. And then you can get the 3rd evidence point by using 4 out of your 5 documents. So what used to be a 2-point category now becomes 3, and they've lowered the bars to ensure that with a little bit less time, because it's only 45 minutes instead of an hour, a little less time, we still have some points that you can get to. So that's your evidence from the documents piece. We've also taken out, extrapolated the evidence beyond the documents to 2-point category instead of a 1-point category. So in this case, I think a lot of us can be really successful if you remember to use this, to use outside evidence in our argument. If you use one piece of evidence not found in the documents, all right? So maybe the documents are all about, let's pick a topic, right? Sectionalism in the 1850s, right? And the documents include the Kansas-Nebraska Act. The documents include bleeding Kansas. And the documents include the Dred Scott decision. The documents include all these things, but the documents don't include Uncle Tom's Cabin. Cool. Well, then you saying Uncle Tom's Cabin as a piece of abolitionist literature also increases sectionalism. There you go. That's one additional piece of evidence that's not in the documents that you're using to support your argument. That was what the rubric used to say right here. What they've done this year with this modified rubric is they've allowed you, if you use a second piece of additional historical evidence, a second piece of outside evidence that's not in the documents to also support your argument, you get a second point there. So what they're doing is they're encouraging you to think of everything you know and include it in your, not just a summary of things, but include it in your argument. So back to my previous story about the 1850s, if you wanted to use the caning of Charles Sumner by Preston Brooks, perfect. Not in the documents, second piece of evidence, you've now used Uncle Tom's Cabin and the caning of Charles Sumner. Now both of those can be used to further or push your argument, and thus you can achieve both of these evidence beyond the documents points. Now in this case, the analysis and reasoning is going to look very similar, like the rest of the rubric does, to what we had before. However, what used to be the need to analyze 3 documents, the bar has lowered and split. So the bar is lowered to 1 document with your hit skills, right? The point of view, the purpose, the historical situation or context, and the intended audience. But again, you're not just saying this is the point of view, this is the context, but you're using those pieces to further your argument, right? The College Board is very clear. To earn this point, you must explain how or why the point of view or purpose or context or audience is relevant to your argument. You can't just identify what it is. But again, this is split out. So if you analyze 1 document, that's a point. If you analyze a second document, that's also a point. So what used to be the need to do to get 3 documents here, which was a hard point to achieve. Now they've lowered that and said 1 or 2, preferably 2. Why not? Let's get wild. The last point stays the same, so I won't spend too much time on it, but it's this complex argumentation piece. It's the unicorn point. It's the last point. If your prompt asks you for causes of, and you give me an effect as well, cause, effect, now we're in business. Now we can think about getting this complex argumentation piece. Or you could say, this sectionalism in the 1850s is quite similar to sectionalism in the 1960s, right? In which the southern and northern areas of the country are, in this case, divided over things like civil rights instead of slavery. So it's just that question of, can you take this time period, this argument, and accurately and insightfully and deeply compare its similarities or differences to another time period in history. And again, this understanding must be part of your argument, not merely a phrase or reference. You're going to throw it in at the end and hope it happens. So we'll look at what this looks like as a team, as a group going forward. I wanted to get this information into your hands so that you could begin grappling with it and processing it. We'll spend a lot of time on this, on document analysis, to ensure that you guys are ready to go and equipped to do everything you can to pass this test that was planned for May 8th. Now it's May 15th. I am at your service should you need any help. I love you all, and we'll talk soon. Bye, guys.